The only way to win is to stop playing.
The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered against the concrete floor of Patterson's auto shop. Tommy was laughing so hard he nearly choked on his energy drink. "Dude, you gotta see this," he wheezed, shoving his phone in my face. "This couple's getting freaky in the back of an Uber. The comments are brutal." The TikTok played on loop. Two people making out in the backseat of a car while some text overlay mocked the clueless husband at home. The video had 3 million views and climbing. I wiped my greasy hands on my coveralls and looked closer. Something about the background caught my eye. That street sign. That blue house with the crooked mailbox. That was my street. I grabbed Tommy's phone and paused the video. There, parked in the driveway behind the Uber, was my silver Honda Civic with the dented bumper from last winter. The woman in the back seat had blonde hair and a butterfly tattoo on her shoulder. Claire had gotten that tattoo for our 10th anniversary. She said it represented transformation. "You okay, man?" Tommy asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed back his phone without a word. My hands were steady as I cleaned my tools and clocked out 2 hours early. Patterson didn't even look up from his paperwork when I told him I had to go. The drive home took forever. Every red light felt like an eternity. I kept replaying the video in my head, memorizing details. The timestamp showed it was filmed 3 days ago, Tuesday afternoon, when I was working a double shift. I parked in my driveway next to the same spot where the Uber had been. The house looked normal, peaceful even. Claire's car was gone, probably picking up Maya from school. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Coffee mug in the sink, Claire's romance novel face down on the kitchen counter, the smell of her vanilla perfume still lingering in the air. I sat at my computer and did something I'd never done before. I took screenshots of our joint bank accounts, insurance policies, and investment portfolios. Then I changed all the passwords and removed Claire's access. 23 years of marriage, 17 years raising Maya. All of it reduced to a viral video where strangers laughed at the stupid husband who didn't know his wife was screwing around. But I did know. I'd known for months. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she looked through me instead of at me. I just hadn't cared enough to do anything about it. That was my first mistake. Claire walked through the front door at 6:30, grocery bags in hand and a smile on her face. She looked radiant, happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing my cheek. "How was work?" "Interesting," I replied, setting down my beer. "Want to see something?" I pulled up Tommy's TikTok on my laptop and turned the screen toward her. Claire's face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then defiance. "So?" she said, unpacking groceries like nothing had happened. "It's just a video." "It's you, Claire, in the backseat of an Uber 3 days ago?" She laughed, actually laughed. "You're being paranoid." "That could be anyone. The butterfly tattoo says otherwise." Claire stopped unpacking and looked at me with something close to pity. "Oh, Eli, you really think I'd cheat on you? With some random Uber driver?" The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. "Call your sister," I said. "What?" "Call Jessica. Tell her about this crazy video where some woman who looks exactly like you is making out with a stranger. See what she says." Claire's jaw tightened. She pulled out her phone and dialed. I could hear Jessica's voice through the speaker when she answered. "Hey, Jess, you'll never believe this," Claire said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Eli thinks I'm cheating on him because of some stupid video online." "Can you believe it?" Jessica's laughter was immediate and harsh. "Oh my God, seriously? What video?" "Some TikTok where a woman with blonde hair is kissing a guy in a car. He thinks it's me because she has a butterfly tattoo." "Wait," Jessica said, and I heard her tone shift. "Claire, you didn't actually—" "Of course not," Claire cut her off quickly. "But you know how insecure Eli gets."
Remember when he thought I was flirting with the mailman?
More laughter from Jessica. "Men are so pathetic when they're threatened." "Maybe if he paid more attention to you instead of hiding in that garage all day." I closed the laptop and walked outside. The evening air was cool against my face. I sat on the porch steps and waited. 20 minutes later, a black Honda pulled up to the curb. The driver was young, maybe 25, with carefully styled hair and arms covered in tattoos. He wore a gold chain and designer sunglasses, even though the sun was setting. He rolled down his window and honked twice. Claire appeared in the doorway, gave me a look that said, "We'll finish this later." and walked toward the car. "Hey, Ray," she called out, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Thanks for picking me up." "Girls' night, you know how it is." Ray grinned and revved his engine. "No problem, beautiful. Anything for you." That's when I stood up and walked over to the car. Ray's window was still down. He looked at me with barely concealed amusement. "You must be the husband," he said. "Claire's told me so much about you." I didn't say anything. I just reached through the window and grabbed him by his shirt collar, pulling him halfway out of the car before driving my fist into his jaw. Ray's sunglasses flew off and his head snapped back. He tried to reverse, but I had leverage now, dragging him completely out of the vehicle. He swung wild, catching me in the ribs, but I'd been working with my hands for 2 decades. I knew how to throw a punch. I dropped him with a straight right to his nose. Crimson splattered across his designer shirt. He tried to get up, swinging desperately, but I caught his wrist and twisted until he screamed. "Eli, stop!" Claire was yelling from somewhere behind me. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Neighbors were coming out of their houses now. Mrs. Patterson from across the street, the college kids from next door. All of them staring as Ray crawled back toward his car, life fluid streaming from his nose. "You're crazy, man," Ray gasped, fumbling for his keys. "Absolutely psychotic." "Maybe," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But I'm just getting started." Ray drove away with his horn blaring and his ego in pieces. Claire was screaming at me, calling me names I'd never heard her use before. The neighbors were whispering among themselves, probably calling the police. I walked back into the house, grabbed my truck keys, and left. I didn't look back. Maya was waiting for me at Rosewood High's main entrance when I picked her up the next morning. She slid into the passenger seat without a word, her arms crossed and her expression cold. "Mom told me what you did," she said finally. "I'm sure she did. She said you attacked some innocent guy for no reason. That you're having some kind of breakdown." I stopped at a red light and looked at my daughter. 17 years old, blonde hair like her mother, but with my dark eyes. She'd been my world once. Before Claire turned her against me with whispered conversations and shared eye rolls. "What do you think happened?" I asked. Maya scoffed. "I think you're embarrassing. Mom deserves better than some paranoid loser who can't handle his wife having friends." The light turned green. I drove in silence for several blocks before pulling into the parking lot of Danny's Diner. It was Claire's favorite restaurant, the place we'd had our first date 24 years ago. "Why are we stopping here?" Maya asked. "Because your mother and her sister are inside having breakfast. And I want you to hear something." Through the window, I could see Claire and Jessica in their usual booth, coffee cups and plates of food between them. They were laughing about something, heads bent together in conspiracy. "Come on," I said, getting out of the truck. Maya followed reluctantly. I chose a booth 3 tables away, close enough to hear but far enough to avoid being seen. The hostess seated us with our backs to Claire and Jessica. "This is stupid," Maya whispered. "Just listen." Jessica's voice carried clearly across the restaurant. "So what are you going to do about Eli?" "Nothing," Claire replied. "He'll calm down in a few days. He always does." "Remember when he thought I was having an affair with his brother? That was different. You weren't actually sleeping with anyone then." They both laughed. Maya's face went pale. "Ray's good in bed," Claire continued, "but he's not exactly husband material. Too young, too immature, but God, the things he does with his tongue." "Claire," Jessica giggled. Not at breakfast. I'm serious. After 18 years of missionary position with Mr. Excitement over there, it's nice to feel alive again. Ray makes me feel like I'm 25. Maya was staring at her untouched orange juice. Her hands were shaking. "What about Maya?" Jessica asked. "She adores you. Won't this mess her up?" "Kids are resilient," Claire said dismissively. "Besides, maybe it's time she learned that her father isn't the hero she thinks he is. He's boring, Jessica. Deadly boring. He comes home from that garage covered in grease, eats dinner in silence, and falls asleep watching TV. When's the last time he surprised me? When's the last time he made me laugh? So why don't you just leave him? Because I'm not stupid. He's got good insurance, steady job, and that house is in both our names. Ray's fun, but he can't pay my bills. I left $20 on the table and walked out. Maya followed, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know," she whispered in the parking lot. "Dad, I didn't know she was—" "Yeah, you did," I said, starting the truck. "You just chose her side anyway." The drive to school was silent. When I dropped Maya off, she hesitated at the passenger door. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to give your mother exactly what she wants," I said. A life without me in it. That afternoon, I deleted myself from our shared streaming accounts, changed my phone number, and opened a new bank account. I transferred half of our savings, legally mine, and closed our joint credit cards. By evening, Claire was calling frantically, but I had already switched to a burner phone. The old Eli was gone. What remained was something colder, more focused, something dangerous. Rico's ink was tucked between a pawn shop and a taco stand on the rough side of town. I'd known Rico since we were kids, back when we used to steal bicycles and sell them for candy money. Now he owned the most respected tattoo parlor in the city. "Eli Moreno," he said, looking up from a client's arm. "Haven't seen you in forever, man. What brings you to my kingdom?" I waited while he finished a tribal design on some college kid's bicep. The shop smelled like antiseptic and cigarettes. Rap music played softly from hidden speakers. "Need to ask you something private," I said when the customer left. Rico locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. He opened 2 beers and handed me one. "Talk to me, Hermano." I showed him the TikTok video. Rico watched it twice, his expression growing darker each time. "That's Claire," he said. It wasn't a question. "You recognize the guy?" "Ray Hutchinson. He's been around. Does Uber, DoorDash, whatever pays? Thinks he's some kind of influencer because he's got 50,000 TikTok followers." Rico was quiet for a moment, studying my face. "You want to hear something screwed up?" he said finally. "More screwed up than this. Remember my bachelor party 8 years ago?" I nodded. Rico had rented a cabin up in Pine Ridge. Fishing, poker, too much beer. A weekend of pretending we were still 25. "Your boy Jake was there. Your best man, right? The one who moved to Denver?" My stomach dropped. Jake had been my closest friend since high school. He'd been the best man at my wedding. Maya's godfather, part of our family. "What about him?" Rico pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. He found what he was looking for and handed it to me. The picture showed the cabin's back deck. Rico and his groomsmen were playing cards around a wooden table. But in the background, barely visible through a window, 2 figures were embracing in what looked like Rico's bedroom. One was definitely Claire. I recognized her silhouette, the way she tilted her head when she kissed someone. The other was Jake. "I took this picture for the memories," Rico said quietly. "Didn't notice them until later. I never said anything because..." What was I supposed to say? "Hey, Eli, your wife was screwing your best friend at my bachelor party." I studied the photo for a long time. Claire had told me she had a headache that night and went to bed early. Jake had disappeared around the same time, claiming he needed to make some work calls. "How long?" I asked. "I don't know, man. But looking back, they were always real friendly at your barbecues." Real friendly. I handed back the phone and finished my beer. The taste was bitter, but not as bitter as the realization that I'd been played for years. "You know what this means?" Rico said. "Yeah," I replied, standing up. "It means the more they lie, the more I get to take." Rico smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "That's the Eli I remember from the old neighborhood. What do you need?" "Information. About Ray. About everyone who thinks I'm some pathetic, deceived hubby who doesn't fight back." "Consider it done." I drove home through streets that looked different now, sharper somehow. The old Eli would have confronted Claire with the photo, demanded explanations, maybe even called Jake crying about betrayal. The new Eli had better plans. The storage unit cost $200 a month and came with a roll-up door and concrete walls thick enough to muffle sound. I paid 6 months in advance, cash, using a fake name Rico had helped me create. Inside, I set up a command center that would make the FBI proud. 3 laptops, multiple phones, and enough recording equipment to stock a small studio. I'd learned electronics in the Army back when I thought I might make a career out of fixing radios and radar systems. The apartment came next, a 1-bedroom rental across town, month-to-month lease, cash deposit. The landlord didn't ask questions as long as the money was green. Installing cameras in my own house was easier than it should have been. I still had the original blueprints from when we'd bought the place. The heating system ran through every room, and the air vents were just big enough for micro cameras with wireless transmitters. Claire never noticed me working in the basement, running cable through walls I'd built with my own hands. She was too busy texting Ray and planning their next rendezvous. By the end of the week, I could monitor every room in the house from my phone. Audio and video crystal clear, automatically uploaded to cloud storage accounts Claire couldn't access or delete. The first recording session was educational. Claire brought Ray home on Thursday afternoon, 3 hours before Maya got out of school. They barely made it to the living room before tearing each other's clothes off. I watched from my storage unit, taking notes like a scientist studying lab rats. Ray was all noise and flash, the kind of lover who thought volume equaled skill. Claire seemed to enjoy the performance, but I could tell she was faking most of it. What really got to me wasn't the sex, it was what came after. "Your husband's such a loser," Ray said, lighting a cigarette on my couch. "I can't believe you married that guy." "He wasn't always boring," Claire replied, wrapped in my favorite blanket. "When we met, he had this intensity, you know? But 20 years of marriage just eliminated it. Why don't you leave him?" "Because he's useful. He pays the mortgage, keeps my car running, provides health insurance. I'm not stupid enough to give up security for good pecker." They both laughed. Ray blew smoke toward the ceiling fan I'd installed last summer. "Besides," Claire continued, "this is more fun, the sneaking around, the risk. If I divorced him, it would just be another boring relationship." Ray sat up and grabbed his phone. "Check this out. I'm going to post about this later." He showed Claire his TikTok account. The bio read, "Living life to the fullest, your girl's favorite side piece." His most recent video was filmed in what looked like my garage. He was lip-syncing to some rap song while holding up a wrench, mocking dudes who think they're tough because they work with their hands. The caption read, "When her husband calls you bro but doesn't know you're hitting it from the back." That video had 200,000 views and thousands of comments. People were laughing at me, at my marriage, at my entire life, and I'd never even seen it. "You're terrible," Claire giggled, but she was clearly enjoying the attention. "Hey, it's not my fault he's blind. Some dudes just don't pay attention to what's theirs." Ray dressed quickly and left through the back door, probably to avoid nosy neighbors. Claire cleaned up their mess and sprayed air freshener like that would hide the smell of betrayal. I turned off my monitors and sat in the darkness of my storage unit. 23 years of marriage reduced to content for some punk's social media account. But now I had everything recorded, every laugh, every insult, every casual cruelty. And I was just getting started. Thunder Fitness was the kind of gym where serious fighters trained alongside weekend warriors trying to recapture their youth. Ray taught a Tuesday evening boxing class called Street Smart Fundamentals, which was mostly rich kids paying $50 to punch heavy bags and feel dangerous. I signed up under the name Michael Torres, paid cash, and told the front desk I was new to the area. The young woman behind the counter barely looked up from her phone. Ray's class had 12 students, all of them soft and eager to impress their instructor. Ray wore designer workout gear and shadowbox between explanations, showing off combinations he'd probably learned from YouTube videos. "Boxing isn't just about throwing punches," he lectured the group. "It's about confidence, about showing the world you're not someone to mess with. Some people are naturally fighters, others," he looked directly at me, "others need to learn the hard way." I nodded along like the eager student I was pretending to be. Ray ate up the attention, probably thinking he'd found another easy mark to boost his ego. "Pair up for some light sparring," Ray announced. "Nothing heavy, just practice your combinations." When no one volunteered to partner with me, Ray stepped forward with a patronizing smile. "I'll work with the new guy," he said. "Show him how it's done." The other students formed a circle around us. Ray put on headgear and handed me a pair that smelled like disinfectant and other people's sweat. "Remember," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "this is just practice. No need to prove anything. Some of us are natural athletes, others just need to accept their limitations." I slipped on the gloves and adopted a loose amateur stance. Ray immediately began showing off, dancing around me with exaggerated footwork, throwing combinations at half speed. "See that footwork?" he called to the class. "That's what 20 years of training looks like." Can't teach natural talent. He'd made 2 mistakes. First, he assumed I was helpless because I looked ordinary. Second, he started believing his own hype. I let him play for 30 seconds, taking light jabs and moving awkwardly like someone who'd never been in a fight. Ray grew more confident, throwing harder shots, talking more trash. "This is what happens when you don't take care of yourself," he announced, landing a jab to my shoulder. Some guys just accept being beta males their whole lives. That's when I decided he'd had enough fun. Ray threw a lazy left hook, telegraphing it from 3 zip codes away. I stepped inside his guard, deflected the punch, and drove my right hand into his solar plexus. Not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but hard enough to fold him in half. As he doubled over, gasping, I grabbed the back of his head and brought my knee up toward his face. At the last second, I pulled it, letting my kneecap tap his forehead just hard enough to make a point. Ray staggered backward, eyes wide with shock. The casual arrogance was gone, replaced by something close to fear. "Lucky shot," he wheezed, trying to regain his composure. I didn't give him the chance. I moved forward with combinations I'd learned in the Army, back when fighting wasn't a hobby but a survival skill. Jab, cross hook, slipping his desperate counters, controlling distance and timing like he was moving through molasses. Ray swung wild, trying to catch me with something big and sloppy. I ducked under his haymaker and came up with an uppercut that snapped his head back. Not enough to knock him out, but enough to scramble his brain for a few seconds. The gym went dead quiet, except for Ray's labored breathing. He was still standing, but barely. His designer shirt was soaked with sweat, and his perfect hair was plastered to his scalp. "That's enough," someone called from the crowd. But Ray wasn't done embarrassing himself. He charged forward with his head down like an angry bull. I sidestepped and let his own momentum carry him into the heavy bag behind me. He bounced off and hit the mat hard. "Stay down," I said quietly. Ray tried to get up, slipped, and fell again. The second time he managed to reach his knees, he stayed there, breathing hard and staring at the floor. I pulled off my gloves and headgear. "Thanks for the lesson," I told him. Really educational. As I walked toward the exit, I heard someone behind me say, "Holy crap, did you get that on video?" Someone had. By morning, footage of Ray's humiliation was trending on local fitness forums. The comments were brutal. "Fake tough guy gets schooled. This is what happens when you believe your own hype. That old dude just ended this kid's whole career. Ray never taught another class at Thunder Fitness." Word got around that he'd been exposed as a fraud, that some random middle-aged guy had made him look like an amateur in front of his own students. But I wasn't done with him yet, not even close. Maya's social circle revolved around 3 things: cheerleading, drama club, and her mother's approval. She'd inherited Claire's need for attention and validation, but unlike her mother, she hadn't learned to hide her cruelty behind a fake smile. The video I released was surgical in its precision. No faces visible, no names mentioned, just audio of Claire making fun of Maya's birth complications while talking to Jessica at their weekly brunch. "She was such an ugly baby," Claire's voice said clearly. "All wrinkled and red with that weird cone head from the forceps. I was honestly embarrassed to show her to people." "Thank God she grew out of it." Jessica's laughter was audible in the background. "You're terrible. She's beautiful now." "Now, yes, but for the first year? Jesus." I used to joke with Eli that we should have sent her back and tried again. The recording was real, captured just last week through the restaurant's ambient audio. I cleaned it up, amplified the relevant parts, and posted it anonymously to several social media platforms with the caption, "When your mom thinks you can't hear her." Within hours, it had spread through Maya's school like wildfire. Teenagers were vicious when they smelled plasma in the water, and this was pure chum. Maya's friends started distancing themselves immediately. Group chats went silent when she joined. Invitations dried up. Teachers looked at her with pity instead of respect. The cheerleading squad was the worst. These girls had grown up together, shared secrets and sleepovers and first crushes. But high school loyalty was paper thin when reputation was on the line. I watched it all unfold through Maya's social media accounts. Her desperate posts trying to explain, to defend her mother, to maintain some dignity. Each attempt only made things worse. "My mom was just joking," she wrote on Instagram. "She loves me." This is taken out of context. The comments were merciless. "Your mom called you ugly at LOL. Imagine being embarrassed by your own baby. At least now we know why you're so insecure." Maya's grades started slipping. She quit drama club. Even her teachers began treating her differently, like she was fragile, damaged goods. 3 weeks after the video dropped, my burner phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did you do this?" it read. I knew it was Maya. She'd probably gotten a new phone to avoid the maltreatment on her regular number. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I drove to our old house and watched through the cameras as she sat in her room, crying while Claire yelled at her about bringing shame on the family. "This is your fault somehow," Claire was screaming. "You must have said something, trusted the wrong person. Now everyone thinks I'm a terrible mother." Maya tried to defend herself, but Claire wasn't listening. She was too busy playing sufferer, making her daughter's pain about her own reputation. That night, I sent Maya a package with no return address. Inside were dozens of photos from when she was little. Maya at age 5, gap-toothed and grinning, wearing a homemade cape and a construction paper crown. The caption on the back read, "Daddy's hero," in my handwriting. Maya at 7, helping me build a treehouse in the backyard. Maya at 10, falling asleep in my lap while we watched cartoons. Maya at 12, hugging me after I scared away some boys who were bullying her at school. Pictures of a little girl who used to think her father hung the moon before her mother taught her that love was conditional and loyalty was a commodity to be traded. At the bottom of the box was a note. "I did love you once." That was real, even if nothing else was. My phone buzzed again that night. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know she was like this." But I knew Maya's apology was too little, too late. She'd chosen her side when it mattered, when standing by me would have meant standing against her mother's popularity and social status. The damage was done, to both of us. Claire thought she was reinventing herself. The viral video and Ray's humiliation had actually boosted her local profile in a twisted way. Suddenly, she was the notorious cheating wife that everyone wanted to gossip about, and Claire never met attention she didn't love. She started dressing younger, posting more on social media, talking about living authentically and not apologizing for her happiness. It was pathetic, but it gave me the opening I needed. The fake company was Rico's idea, but I made it real. Digital Renaissance Consulting had a professional website, LinkedIn profiles for fictional executives, and a business address at a co-working space downtown. We even had business cards and a company credit card. My fictional identity was David Kim, a marketing consultant who specialized in personal brand transformation for women in transition. I created testimonials from satisfied clients, before and after case studies, and a waiting list of women, supposedly desperate for my services. Claire took the bait faster than a starving fish. I approached her at Starbucks, recognizing her from mutual friends and praising her courage in living her truth despite social judgment. Within 10 minutes, she was telling me her life story and complaining about how misunderstood she was. "I'm tired of being seen as the villain," she said, stirring her latte with manicured nails. "People don't understand that sometimes you have to choose happiness over other people's expectations." "Absolutely," I agreed, pulling out my tablet. "That's exactly why I started this company. Women like you need better representation in the digital space. You need to control your own narrative." I showed her testimonials from other clients, actually profiles I'd created of fictional women who'd transformed their online presence after messy divorces or affairs. Claire was practically salivating. "How much does something like this cost?" she asked. "For a comprehensive rebranding package? Normally $50,000. But I see real potential in your story. I could do it for $35. Claire's eyes widened. "That's a lot of money." "It's an investment in your future. Think about it. Book deals, speaking engagements, maybe even a reality show. America loves a woman who owns her mistakes and comes out stronger." I could see her mentally spending the money already. Claire had always craved fame, had always believed she was destined for something bigger than being a mechanic's wife in a small town. "What would I have to do?" she asked. "Sign an exclusive representation contract. Give us full control over your digital presence for 12 months. We handle everything. Social media, interviews, brand partnerships, the works." The contract I presented looked professional, full of legal jargon and official-sounding clauses. Claire read maybe half of it before signing, too excited about potential fame to notice the language that gave Digital Renaissance Consulting exclusive rights to her name, image, and story. What she didn't read was the clause that made her financially responsible for any marketing investments that didn't result in profit, or the part that gave the company rights to release any and all promotional materials created during the contract period. Claire paid the $35,000 down payment with money from our joint savings account. money she technically had legal access to but had never touched before. She was so eager to become famous that she didn't question where a marketing company would get the capital to invest in her story. For 2 weeks, I actually delivered on my promises. Professional photo shoots with a photographer Rico knew. Social media posts that made Claire look sophisticated and empowered. A fake interview with a lifestyle blogger about finding yourself after marriage. Claire was in heaven. She bought new clothes, got her hair styled, started talking about moving to Los Angeles to be closer to entertainment industry opportunities. Then I pulled the rug out. The first sign of trouble was an email from Digital Renaissance's legal department informing Claire that initial market research showed limited commercial appeal for her brand. Focus groups had responded negatively to her story, finding her unlikable and self-serving. The company was terminating her contract and demanding immediate repayment of all marketing investments, which, according to the fine print, now totaled $68,000, including photographer fees, web development, and opportunity costs. Claire called the company's phone number and got a recording saying the business had been dissolved due to financial irregularities. The website went dark. The co-working space claimed they'd never heard of David Kim, but the real damage was yet to come. I released everything, the professional photos, but edited to look cheap and desperate. The interview, but with additional audio that made Claire sound delusional and narcissistic. Her signed contract, highlighting the parts that made her look greedy and gullible. The internet loved it. Here was a woman so hungry for fame that she'd paid thousands of dollars to make herself look worse. Claire became a meme, a cautionary tale, a punchline. Imagine being so desperate for attention that you pay someone to humiliate you online. This is what happens when you mistake notoriety for fame. She literally paid for her own roasting. Claire tried to fight back, claiming she'd been scammed. But the evidence showed she'd signed the contracts willingly. She'd made every decision herself, driven by greed and vanity, and the belief that her story was worth something. The mockery was relentless and global. Claire's name became synonymous with delusional entitlement. Job interviews went nowhere. Credit applications were denied. Even grocery store clerks recognized her and whispered to their coworkers. She was famous at last. Just not the way she'd imagined. Ray had been laying low since the gym incident, but ego is a powerful pill. 3 months of humiliation had only made him angrier, more desperate to prove he wasn't the fraud everyone now believed him to be. He started accepting rides in sketchy parts of town, probably hoping to find someone weaker than himself to intimidate. He began posting increasingly desperate content on social media, trying to rebuild his tough guy image with manufactured confrontations and fake beef with local influencers. That's when I decided to give him the performance opportunity he was craving. The booking came through a premium ride app, the kind wealthy clients used when they wanted discretion. VIP pickup for private event, the request read. Cash payment, $500 for 2 hours, no questions asked. Ray couldn't resist. He'd been struggling financially since losing his teaching gig at Thunder Fitness. His regular rideshare earnings weren't covering his car payments and designer lifestyle. The pickup address led him to an industrial district on the edge of town, where warehouses and auto repair shops sat dark and empty after business hours. I watched through binoculars as Ray's Honda pulled into the lot, headlights cutting through the evening shadows. He parked outside the address I'd given him and checked his phone. No additional instructions. He honked twice, then stepped out of his car to look around. That's when I approached from behind, moving quietly across the gravel lot. "Ray Hutchinson?" I called out. He turned, and I watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, and finally fear as he realized who I was. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked, backing toward his car. "You've been talking about me online," I said, continuing to walk toward him, calling me names, making jokes about my wife, my marriage, my life. Ray's hand was on his car door handle now. "Look, man, that was just social media bullcrap. I didn't mean anything by it." "Sure you did. You meant every word. That's why we're here." The warehouse behind us was actually Rico's uncle's place, abandoned for the past 2 years, but still equipped with electricity and running water. I'd been preparing it for weeks, setting up cameras and soundproofing and all the tools I'd need for what came next. "I don't want any trouble," Ray said. "I'll delete the videos, okay? I'll take down everything. Too late for that. Way too late. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. It was his own TikTok account, specifically the video where he'd mocked me while holding my wrench in my garage. Recognize this? I asked. Ray's face went pale. How did you get that footage? Same way I got footage of you screwing my wife on my couch. Same way I got audio of you calling me a deceived hubby to your friends. I've been watching Ray. Learning. Preparing. I could see him calculating his chances of reaching his car, of driving away before this conversation went somewhere he couldn't come back from. But I was already between him and escape. What do you want? He asked. Justice, I said. The kind the legal system doesn't provide for men like you. That's when Ray made his move, lunging toward his car keys. I caught his wrist and twisted, applying pressure to nerve points I'd learned in military training. He dropped to his knees with a sharp cry. Inside, I said, gesturing toward the warehouse. Ray tried to resist, but I had leverage and 20 years of physical labor on my side. I guided him through the side door and into the main floor, where I'd set up my equipment. The warehouse was mostly empty, except for a single metal chair in the center, surrounded by professional-grade lighting and camera equipment. Ray's eyes went wide when he saw the setup. You're insane, he whispered. Maybe, but I'm thorough. I zip-tied his hands behind the chair and positioned him under the lights. Ray struggled at first, but the restraints were military-grade and properly applied. He wasn't going anywhere. Here's what's going to happen, I explained, adjusting camera angles. You're going to tell the truth. About my wife, about me, about the lies you've been spreading online, and then you're going to experience some consequences. This is abducting, Ray said. You'll go to prison. Will I? You came here voluntarily responding to a ride request. No one forced you. And when this is over, you'll be free to leave. Embarrassed, but free. I started recording and pulled up Ray's social media accounts on a tablet. Let's begin with this one, I said, showing him the video where he'd called me a beta male. Explain to your followers what that was really about. Ray refused at first, clamping his mouth shut like a defiant child. That's when I picked up a bucket of kitchen scraps. Rotting vegetables, spoiled milk, coffee grounds, and worse things I'd been collecting for weeks. You've got two choices, I said. Talk or wear this. The smell alone made Ray gag. When I tipped the bucket slightly and let some liquid drip onto his designer shoes, he broke. Okay, I'll talk. Just keep that crap away from me. For the next hour, Ray confessed everything. The affair with Claire, the videos mocking me, his plan to humiliate me publicly while sleeping with my wife, how he and Claire had laughed about my ignorance, my trusting nature, my failure as a husband, but confession wasn't punishment enough. I dumped the bucket over his head slowly, letting the rotten mixture soak into his hair and clothes. Ray screamed and thrashed, but the restraints held firm. The smell was overwhelming, like a dumpster in August heat. This is what you are, I told him, recording every second. Garbage, filth, a parasite who feeds on other people's trust. Ray was crying now, snot and tears mixing with the organic waste dripping down his face. His expensive clothes were ruined, his perfectly styled hair plastered with coffee grounds and vegetable peelings. Please, he sobbed. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Sorry you got caught, sorry you're facing consequences. But not sorry for what you did. I left him there for another hour, letting the humiliation sink in while I edited the footage. By the time I came back, Ray had stopped struggling and was just sitting in defeated silence. One more thing, I said, cutting his restraints. Delete your social media accounts. All of them. Tonight. Ray nodded frantically, his hands shaking as he pulled out his phone. I watched as he deleted TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, everything that had fed his ego and enabled his cruelty. If I see you online again, I said, if I hear you talking about me or my family, if you so much as mention my name to anyone, this video goes viral, understand? Ray nodded and stumbled toward the door, still dripping with garbage. He looked broken, diminished, like a deflated balloon. Oh, and Ray? I called after him. Stay away from my wife. She's not worth what I'll do to you next time. He ran to his car without looking back, leaving behind only the smell of rotting food and shattered pride. The next morning, local social media was buzzing with rumors about Ray's sudden disappearance from the internet. People speculated about pill problems, legal troubles, or mental breakdown. The truth was simpler. He'd finally met someone who didn't find him amusing. Jessica's birthday party was the kind of gathering Claire lived for, 30 adults pretending to have fun while judging each other's life choices. It was held at Jessica's house, the same place where Claire had laughed about my ignorance over mimosas and eggs Benedict. I wasn't invited, obviously. Claire had made sure her family knew I was persona non grata, the crazy ex-husband who'd lost his mind and couldn't handle his wife's happiness. But I came anyway. I walked through the front door like I belonged there, carrying a bottle of expensive wine and wearing my best smile. The conversation stopped dead when people saw me. Eli? Jessica's voice was sharp with surprise and worry. What are you doing here? Celebrating, I said, setting the wine on the kitchen counter. It's a party, right? Claire appeared from the living room, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She was wearing a tight red dress that showed off her figure, probably hoping to impress some man who wasn't her husband. You need to leave, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Right now. I brought a gift, I replied, pulling out my phone. Something everyone should see. Before Claire could stop me, I connected my phone to Jessica's smart TV via Bluetooth. The screen lit up with footage from inside our house, high-definition video of Claire and Ray on our living room couch. But this wasn't just Zex. This was the conversation afterward, where Claire had called me a loser and laughed about my ignorance, where Ray had boasted about fooling the pathetic husband who paid for everything. The party guests watched in stunned silence as my wife's betrayal played out in surround sound. Claire's parents, her siblings, her friends, all of them hearing the truth about what she really thought of her marriage and her family. Turn it off! Claire screamed, lunging for the TV remote. But I wasn't done. The next video showed Claire's confession to Jessica at the diner, admitting the affair and explaining how she was using me for financial security while getting her thrills elsewhere. I never loved him, Claire's voice said clearly through the speakers. Not really. He was just safe, reliable, a good provider. But Ray makes me feel alive. Jessica's face went white. She'd been caught on camera laughing along, encouraging her sister's deception, helping plan the lies that kept me blind to the truth. This is illegal, someone shouted from the crowd. You can't record people without consent. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. It's my house, my cameras, my property. Everything here was recorded legally on premises I own. That's when Ray burst through the front door, probably summoned by one of Claire's frantic texts. He looked like hell, thinner than before, jumpy, constantly checking over his shoulder like he expected ambush. What the hell is going on? He demanded, then stopped short when he saw me. The entire party turned to look at him. These suburban professionals had heard about Ray through gossip and social media, but seeing him in person was different. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by weeks of hiding and paranoia. Ray, Claire called out, relief flooding her voice. Thank God you're here. Eli's completely lost his mind. He's showing private videos to everyone. Ray's eyes darted between me and the TV screen, which was now showing footage of him bragging about sleeping with another man's wife. You son of a witch, he said, taking a step toward me. Careful, I warned. Remember what happened last time you tried to fight me? But Ray was desperate now, cornered and humiliated in front of an audience. He swung wild, telegraphing his punch like he'd learned nothing from our previous encounter. I caught his wrist, twisted, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into Jessica's dining room table. Plates and glasses shattered, expensive wine spilling across the white tablecloth. Ray tried to get up, slipped on the wet floor, and went down hard. This time he stayed down, breathing heavily and staring at the ceiling. Jesus Christ, Eli, Jessica shouted. You're going to eliminate someone. I'm not going to eliminate anyone, I replied, straightening my shirt. I'm just defending myself. Claire was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks as she knelt beside Ray. Her perfect party dress was stained with wine, and her reputation was in ruins. Why are you doing this to us? She sobbed. We never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did, I said. You planned it. You enjoyed it. You laughed about it with your friends. The only thing you regret is getting caught. Claire's parents stood in the doorway, looking older than their years. Her father had always liked me, had treated me like the son he'd never had. Now he couldn't meet my eyes. Pack your things, he told Claire quietly. You can't stay here anymore. Daddy, please, Claire begged. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, her mother said coldly. We saw the videos. We heard what you said about your family, about us, about Maya. The mention of our daughter made Claire flinch. Maya wasn't at the party. She was probably hiding in her room, avoiding the social fallout from her mother's public humiliation. Get out, Jessica said, pointing at the door. All of you, just get out. I picked up my phone and headed for the exit. As I passed Claire, she grabbed my arm. Please, she whispered. Can't we work this out? Go to counseling or something? I looked down at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 24 years ago. But something fundamental had broken between us. Something that couldn't be repaired with apologies or therapy. You already made your choice, I said. Now, live with it. I walked out into the night air, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage and the shocked silence of people who'd finally seen the truth. Behind me, I could hear Claire crying and Ray groaning as he tried to stand up. But I didn't look back. I was done looking back. The voicemail came at 3 a.m, when the world was quiet and my phone was the only light in my dark apartment. Dad, it's me. Maya, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I had to call. Her voice was shaky, younger than her 17 years. I could hear traffic in the background like she was calling from a parking lot or street corner. I saw the videos. Everyone's seen them. Mom's staying with Aunt Jessica, but they had a huge fight, and now she's talking about moving in with some friend I've never met. Ray's gone, just disappeared after that party. Nobody's seen him for weeks. There was a long pause, filled with static and the distant sound of cars passing. I know I was awful to you. I know I chose her side when I should have. When I should have seen what was really happening. But I was scared, Dad. Scared of losing her, scared of being alone. Mom always made everything about her, you know? If you didn't agree with her, if you questioned her, she'd shut you out completely. I sat up in bed, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my daughter's confession in the darkness. She's different now, angry all the time, paranoid. She keeps saying you ruined her life, that you're some kind of monster. But I remember who you were before all this started. You never yelled at me, never made me feel stupid or worthless. You were just there, steady. Safe. Maya's voice cracked on that last word. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for everything I said, everything I did. I know you probably hate me now and I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I remember. I remember building that treehouse, and the time you scared away those bullies, and how you used to read me stories when I couldn't sleep. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know where you are or what you're planning to do next, but if there's any part of you that still loves me, could you maybe call me back? I miss you. I miss having a dad. The voicemail ended with a soft click, leaving me alone with the silence and the weight of 17 years of fatherhood. I didn't call back immediately. Instead, I sat in the darkness thinking about choices and consequences, about the difference between justice and revenge, about whether love could survive betrayal. 3 days later, I left a package on Maya's doorstep. Inside was her old artwork from kindergarten. Crayon drawings of our family, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Pictures of a little girl who'd drawn her daddy as the tallest figure, the one standing between her and the world. At the bottom was a photo I'd kept in my wallet for 12 years. Maya at age 5, wearing a paper crown she'd made in art class and a cape fashioned from one of my old work shirts. On the back, in my handwriting, Daddy's hero. There was no note, no explanation. Just evidence of a time when love was simple and trust was absolute. Maya called that night, crying so hard she could barely speak. I found the package, she managed between sobs. I remember that day. I remember making that crown, and you said I looked like a real princess. You did, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken to her in months. Are you ever coming home? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with hope and fear and the knowledge that some things, once broken, couldn't be put back together. I don't think so, sweetheart. Because of what I did. Because of what we all did. Because home isn't a place anymore. It's people who trust each other, and we lost that somewhere along the way. Maya cried harder. I want to fix it. I want to make it right. Some things can't be fixed, but that doesn't mean they weren't real. You were the best thing in my life for 17 years. That doesn't change just because everything else fell apart. We talked for another hour, carefully navigating around the wreckage of our family. Maya told me about school, about friends who'd drifted away during the scandal, about nights when she lay awake wondering if she'd made the right choices. I told her about my new apartment, about starting over at 46, about learning to live with the person I'd become. "Will I see you again?" she asked as the conversation wound down. "Maybe. When you're older, when you're ready to see me as I really am, instead of as the father you remember or the villain your mother painted." "I already see you," Maya said. "I see you now." But I wasn't sure she did. I wasn't sure anyone could see the man I'd become. Not hero, not villain, just someone who'd learned that love without respect was just another form of slow poison. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about the child who called me her hero and the teenager who'd chosen her mother's lies over her father's silence. Maybe someday we'd find our way back to each other. Maybe not. But at least now she knew the truth. I'd loved her once, completely and without reservation. And somewhere, buried under months of anger and revenge, I loved her still. The train station at dawn was almost empty, just a few early commuters clutching coffee cups and checking their phones. I sat on a wooden bench with a single duffel bag at my feet, watching the sun rise over tracks that stretched toward cities I'd never seen. My ticket was for Denver, though I might not stay there long. Rico had given me contacts in Colorado, people who needed skilled mechanics and didn't ask too many questions about the past. The 6:15 train pulled into the station with a grinding of metal and a hiss of hydraulic brakes. I picked up my bag and walked toward the passenger car, thinking about the life I was leaving behind. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me? Are you the guy from the gym video?" I turned to see a young man, maybe college age, holding up his phone like he was trying to place my face. "You know," he continued, "the one where you knocked out that TikTok dirtbag? That was epic, man." That guy had it coming. For a moment, I considered denying it, pretending to be someone else. But lies had destroyed my marriage and poisoned my relationship with my daughter. I was done with deception. "Yeah," I said. "That was me." The kid grinned and held out his phone. "Could I get a selfie? My friends will never believe I met you. You're like internet famous." I looked at the phone, then at the train that was loading passengers for departure. 6 months ago, I would have been horrified by the attention, embarrassed by the notoriety. Now I just felt tired. I said, shouldering my bag. But not anymore. I climbed aboard the train without looking back, found a window seat, and watched my hometown disappear behind the morning haze. There was no dramatic music, no moment of profound realization, no sense of closure or new beginning. Just a man on a train, carrying everything he owned in a single bag, heading toward an uncertain future. The conductor came through, checking tickets. An elderly woman across the aisle asked if I was traveling for business or pleasure. A child behind me kicked my seat until his mother made him stop. Normal life, anonymous life, the kind of ordinary existence I'd taken for granted before my world exploded into viral videos and public humiliation. As the landscape rolled past my window, fields and forests and small towns where people lived quiet lives away from social media and manufactured drama, I thought about Claire and Maya and the man I used to be, the husband who'd trusted too much, the father who'd loved too quietly, the fool who'd believed that loyalty was a virtue instead of a weakness. That man was gone now, left behind with everything else I'd discarded. What remained was something harder, more focused. Someone who understood that respect was more valuable than love, that silence was more powerful than words, that sometimes the only way to win was to stop playing the game entirely. The train picked up speed, carrying me toward whatever came next. I closed my eyes and let the rhythmic clicking of wheels on rails drown out the voices in my head. Claire's laughter, Maya's tears, Ray's boasts, the endless commentary of strangers who'd turned my pain into entertainment. When I opened them again, the sun was higher and the landscape had changed. New territory, new possibilities. Somewhere behind me, Claire was probably planning her next move, looking for another man to provide what I no longer would. Maya was getting ready for school, navigating the social fallout of her mother's choices. Ray was hiding in whatever hole he'd crawled into, afraid to show his face online or off. But their stories were no longer mine to tell. I was just a passenger now, riding toward a horizon that held no promises and no guarantees. The man who'd built tree houses and scared away bullies who'd worked double shifts to pay for dance lessons and college funds, who'd believed in forever and happily ever after. That man had gotten off at an earlier stop. What remained was something simpler and more dangerous. A person who'd learned that love could be weaponized, that trust could be monetized, that sometimes the deepest wounds came from the people who claimed to care about you most. The train rolled on through the morning light, carrying me away from everything I'd ever known toward everything I'd never imagined. And for the first time in months, I wasn't looking back.